Welcome to Synchronicity. My guest this week is Juliana McCarthy. You may remember Juliana from almost a year ago, a little more than a year ago, around July. I got connected with Juliana through Mara from Unbroken Chain, which is on MindPod Network. And I was blown away by Juliana's take on astrology. She had a book that was just coming out then called The Stars Within You, which is still available. There's links to all this stuff on this podcast episode page, wherever you get your podcasts, on the website, syncpodcast.com. All this shit is there. So you'll want to connect with her. You'll see why after this episode. She's just like the most lucid and eloquent and perfect combination of like logical and magical. She's like the perfect vessel for delivering astrology to a world that wants to embrace the positive, kind of real, concretized, amazing aspects of astrology without getting too like carried away into like totally nonsensical like shit that only astrologers care about. She's just like, she has the depth and the fucking breadth that you want in an astrologer. I'm big up in her huge because she's worth it. We talk about a ton of stuff in this episode. The nodes, I finally understand what the north and south nodes are about. It's fucking great. You're going to hear a ton of amazing stuff in this episode. I'm keeping this relatively short. There's going to be, I just want to get through some quick, Jesus Christ. Has anyone else been feeling, the major shifts that have been going on, especially yesterday? I feel like my communication has increased energetically, like tenfold, but I have so much I want to say, like I'm trying to get it out like in a lucid way. So here's what's going on. Patreon, we have switched the levels yet again. I'm going to keep doing this until it feels right. This is just how I work. Get used to it. Once it feels right, it's going to feel incredible. It's just like, it's how it is. Go check that out if you're interested. We have the online smoke session. I think we're going to do it via Zoom. That's going on for patrons on May 7th. That's Thursday. That's the flower moon. Of course it is. We're going to smoke weed, hang out, listen to some music. And then we have the next solo cast is coming out next week. We'll probably do a live reading in between there for patrons. So if you're like, hey, where the fuck are the solo casts? They're on Patreon. That's where they are now. We do the live readings there as well. Okay. What else? And not only, like, I'll also do solo casts. I'm going to sneeze now because, that's what I'm going to do. Hold on. That's nice. That's professional. Also, big shout out to Ned. Guys, I know you've been using the code. They're super happy. I love that you guys love this stuff. It's a really calming, relaxing thing to do. Like if you need to feel a little more in touch with that divine feminine wisdom, CBD is a valid way of doing it. I don't think all CBD is a valid way of doing it. I just think that the stuff that the guys at Ned make is legit because I actually spoke to them. This is the only sponsor that I've stuck with since I've worked with them for a variety of reasons. A, it's working for them. B, it's working for me. C, it's working for you guys. And those are all interchangeable. And I'm glad that it's working for everyone. That's why they keep paying me money. That's why I keep accepting it. And that's why you keep getting their shit, because it's good. If you don't know what I'm talking about, full spectrum hemp oil, CBD, go to helloned.com. Use the code SYNC, SYNC at checkout. You get 15% off your order. They have a brand new website. Super cool. It's easy to use. Go check it out. helloned.com, code SYNC at checkout. You get 15% off. Love those guys. Big shout out to Rhett, Adrian, and Christian, who have really just been the best partners I could want. I was weird about sponsors because like it just never felt right, but these dudes are just like, it feels right, it's working, and I love it. So this episode, again, Juliana is just like, she's the wisdom you want when it pertains to astrology. Go check her out at etherealculture.com. Sign up for her Patreon. There are links, Instagram. She's all over the place. I'll have her on. I think we're going to do like a regular thing if we can, because she's the shit. Okay. I think that's it. Did I forget anything? Yeah, more ramblings and musings. That stuff's over on Patreon now. I'm not going to subject the world to my ramblings all the time, but the next solo cast, we'll do one next week for everyone, public, you guys. If you're not on Patreon, we'll do that. That'll be out in a week. Okay, that's it. Without further ado, here is Juliana McCarthy. I was just reading your May uh, forecast.
Oh yeah.
Astrology is so crazy. It's just it's too eerily accurate sometimes. And whenever I'm like, yeah, but we can like only use our imaginations to control things. And I'm always reminded how stable of an imaginal act astrology is. It's the most accurate forecasting I think of anything I've ever seen. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's really helpful. I mean, I don't know. I feel cool as a cucumber in some ways. In other ways, I'm like yearning for a hug so hard I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I'm cool as a cucumber in terms of like worrying about what's happening in the collective. And I
Macro.
attribute that entirely to astrology.
So well, let's just start. Thanks for coming on again.
Oh, yeah. Happy to be here.
Um, so let's just jump right into it. I mean, how do you view, like when you look at your personal chart or how your natal chart is affected, how does that feel? Because you said like the macro is easy for you to kind of process and look at because of how, and like even just from your writing, it's like you have the most concise and lucid writing I think I've come across related to what's going
Mm.
on right now, and you seem to be consistently ahead with the forecasting too. Just I remember when did we speak? Like October? What July. Like
July.
the whole paradigm shifted like immediately after that. It was like that eclipse season was literally like this, at least for me personally, but it seems like collectively. So what's the difference though when you're looking at like your own chart? Like how does that work for you?
Oh, well, you just look at the planetary positions called the transits and how they're showing up in your natal chart, what houses they're showing up in, what planets they're forming significant angles to, like a 90-degree angle or a conjunction, which is like zero
Yeah.
degrees. Um, and then you can see how it's specifically affecting you. Like, for example, right now, Saturn just moved into Aquarius. So it's at
Yeah.
the beginning degrees of Aquarius. My moon is right there in the beginning degrees of Aquarius. So, Saturn and Aquarius are both isolation of sorts. So we're in this period of like pronounced isolation,
That's why you want
and
that
it's on
hug.
my moon. Yeah, so I feel extra lonely. We all feel it, but some people have families. I don't. At least I have my dog, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely feeling this period of like extra isolation or loneliness. But it's also a period because Saturn is maturation. It's a period of relational maturation for me. The moon is a relational planet,
Yeah.
and it's also home. And I just bought my first home, and
Oh,
I've been really laying roots, which is Saturn on the moon. So all of
congratulations. I
that is
didn't know
reflected.
that. That's
Oh
amazing.
yeah, in
That's
LA. I'm in Highland Park now.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy here.
It's funny. I was just thinking the other day of how many people just moved physical locations. I just signed a lease in April for a new house, and it just seems like a lot of people have shifted into new physical dwellings. Like it's pretty
Yeah,
amazing to notice that just in the macro. So okay, so
it was
you're
good timing.
right. Oh, let me ask you this: when Saturn retrogrades later, does it move back into Capricorn? Am I making that up?
Yes.
It
No,
does,
you're not
right?
making it up. It will
Okay.
move back into Capricorn and revisit some of the terrain that we've already been through. And so, yeah, we're going to be returning to old themes that came up at the start of this year,
Yeah.
leading up to the pandemic and through the beginning of the pandemic. And I love retrogrades because, for people who don't know, a retrograde basically means that from the perspective of Earth, it appears that a planet's orbit is moving backwards all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that happens because of the location of the planet in relation to the Earth,
Yeah.
combined with the speed of the orbit, right? So suddenly the Earth's orbit is going faster than that planet's orbit, and they're moving
Right.
alongside each other. So it appears like the planet's moving backwards. And when that happens, it's a chance to kind of make sure we learned the previous lessons that we learned when Saturn moved across those points that it's now going back to. So it'll actually hit those points 3 times, right? The first time it goes and then it retrogrades and hits again, and then it goes forward and hits a third time. So we have 3 chances to get it right.
That's fun for you also with your Aquarius Saturn and moon placements. You get to get pinged 3 times right there. That's
Oh
fun.
God. Well, I'm actually looking forward to the third time because the third time Saturn and Jupiter will be conjunct in December
Oh,
of 2020, and
nice.
Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter
Yes.
is expansion and gold light and good fortune, and Saturn is contraction, the longevity, and so it's like, okay, so did you get these lessons? Did you get the lessons? Did you figure it out?
Yeah.
um, and it's literally not letting me like get involved with dudes who aren't good for me.
That's good. That's
I
good.
know it's
And then you
driving me
get the
nuts. I'm
boons.
like, okay, this is probably for the best.
I've been there. I've been there, just so you know. I've been there, and it does drive you nuts, but then what comes afterwards, like, you realize it was all worth it, because you're just like, oh, the boons are actually here. Like, I was in these situations and I probably saved myself a shitload of trouble. So yeah, I know. It sucks when you're kind of in it. You kind of just what have you been like learning in this kind of isolation? I mean, this is obviously um important for other people too. We're not the only
I hope
people.
so. Yeah, this is so personal.
It is, but you recognize the clear connection between something, even if people didn't have these specific placements. I mean, the feeling of isolation, especially at least on the East Coast now, like the weather is getting really nice, like kind of out of this hibernation period. But people are, for the most part, you know, still being encouraged to isolate. But I'm curious, like, what lessons have you been kind of like learning from this, as Saturn is pinging you pretty tough?
Yeah, well, I think for me and for most people actually that I've spoken to who are single and even those in relationships, it's been a period of actually having the time to process old situations,
Mm,
old relationship situations. And for me, it's been that way for sure. It's like, oh, my ex I broke up with 2 years ago. I didn't even have much time to process it because my book came out right away. I had to
yeah.
move across the country. And now it's like, oh, there's some crunchiness here that I probably need to tend
Crunchiness. That's a great way of putting it.
to. Yeah, and I've been getting letters from exes. 2 exes wrote
Mm,
me very meaningful letters of acknowledgement, apology, and even asking for advice, which was really
that's
helpful for
awesome.
me to feel like vindicated,
Yeah, and valued. Yeah, yeah.
or at least like settled. And other people have been expressing similar things. And what's interesting is right now it's not just Saturn moving into Aquarius; it's also Venus retrograde in her shadow.
Right.
And Venus is the planet of love and romance and some other things, money and creativity. And she's getting ready to station retrograde as well. And that's going to last until July. And then she'll be in her shadow really until August. And then
Mm,
Mars will go retrograde right after. So
wow.
we are in this long period for the rest of the year until December of Venus and Mars retrograding, of recalibrating love, sex, relationships,
Yeah.
relationship issues, money issues. What direction are we going in? That's Mars. Mars is sexuality. And it's the feminine, Venus, and the masculine, or inner feminine and inner masculine, are
Yes.
also calibrating. And Venus is going retrograde in Gemini, which is communication.
Yes.
So we are learning to communicate in like whole new ways and deeper ways within the context of love and relationships. And our inner feminine is learning to express herself without fear and shame.
Yeah. It's pretty fucking nuts to actually
Mm-hmm.
witness this recalibration take place. And I think everyone goes through it individually, but clearly see that expressed outward, like in the outwardly in the world, I should say. It's pretty amazing, because like it felt like this surge of destruction. Like, I also view this virus kind of, it seems like feminine sacred wisdom, like destruction, the destroyer aspect of the feminine, and a very gentle way. I mean, as gnarly as this pandemic is, And as much death as it's led to, and I don't say this to diminish any individual death and the magnitude that can have on a person and people's lives, relatively speaking, for how this planet has been treated, how individuals have been treated, how we treat ourselves, relatively gentle, like relatively gentle to get people to
Yes.
recalibrate. And that I think is a really
Yes.
important lesson, so we don't get overtaken by like the intense fear that seems to come with that if we fight it. And yeah, this recalibration really does, like, that's, I was just saying, I was reading your May forecast, and that was like an overarching theme, and that just struck me as completely true. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, what's interesting is, of course, for years I was teaching about the paradigm shift of 2020 before this year.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, we're in it now. And in prior years, where we've had similar sorts of conjunctions, there have been wars. And when I would teach about it, people would say, "Do you think we're going to have a war
Right.
in 2020?" And I would say, "No, I don't feel that. I feel like it's more of an energetic war."
Yeah.
And I feel like the pandemic is almost a way more feminine way of waking us up, of jolting us into the next phase
Totally.
than a war would be, you know?
Totally.
And even though I don't want to diminish the suffering and the dying of people in the world at all, but it could have been worse. It could have
Way
been
worse.
a lot worse. And hopefully we can really, because there's relative peace, we're at home, we're not on the front lines, and the men are at home with their families. They're not
Yeah.
on the front lines. Um, hopefully that we have this period of reflection to really glean the lessons and to really be more heart-centered and intelligent in coming up with our ways forward. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Yeah.
um
It would have.
I'm a Tibet. Yeah, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're about to say some really interesting shit.
Well, I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, and there are these predictions, that there would be this moment of kind of great materialism, this moment of great darkness that would arise. And what we would need to survive, what we would need to quote unquote win against materialism, against the sort of quote dark forces,
Mm.
is prajna and karuna,
Mm-hmm.
clear mind, clear intelligence, and warm heart and compassion. And I do feel like those are the energies of the time right now. I mean, with Venus retrograding in Gemini, Venus is heart, Gemini is intelligence,
Right.
you know?
Right. It's
And I do think that we're doing it.
well, we're doing it whether we're kicking or screaming or going willingly is the truth.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of the things I realized, like, too, is if this world is illusory in the truest sense of the word, that, like, it's relative, it's transient, it's impermanent, which I accept. I fully accept that. You might as well believe in the illusory, clear mind, full heart wisdom school of thought. Like, you can go the other direction. That's equally valid in duality, but it seems like enough people have kind of signed up for this major realization. And I don't know, like, people definitely have different reactions to this, because it feels very psychedelic what we're going through. It feels very Bardo like, to use a Tibetan term. Like,
Hmm.
it's reconstituting and recalibrating, like, how we want to engage with ourselves and reality. And, like, the question I think a few people have asked me over the past couple of weeks is, like, do you think it will go back to normal? And I'm like, what was normal? Like, I don't remember. Like, sorry, like,
I
I
know.
don't really remember exactly. Like, I guess, like, when I was a kid, things seemed more simple because I didn't have as broad of conception of the world. But I mean, it was never normal. I don't remember exactly.
No. No, I remember being a kid in the 80s and being like, I don't like this.
Yeah, totally,
I was
totally.
in the 80s in Dallas, Texas, and I
Right,
was like, this
right.
is like really materialistic and I don't really relate to it. And then I learned about the 70s and I was like, I think I was born into the wrong decade.
Yeah, totally, totally. I remember that too. Yeah, fuck.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I talked to a lot of people still. I still have my business is still thriving and look, I'm knocking on wood.
You don't have to knock
But
on wood. I mean, you can do it for fun. You're good to go.
okay, yeah, I think healing is a good sort of uh, what's it called, line of work
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
to be in right now. But I'm talking to a lot of people, and what I'm interestingly hearing from the majority of people I'm speaking to is that they're happier.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I miss my friends and I'm scared about work, I'm scared about money, and I'm scared about logistical things. But the simplicity is making me happier. I
Yeah.
feel more at peace. I feel the symphony of birds when I walk outside and the
Yeah.
earth is glistening and this feels better. I
Yeah.
am talking to mostly women, so I don't know.
Well,
I don't
they've
know how the men are feeling, but
well, I've also found that a lot of women have placed themselves in positions to be around nature. I mean, some men too, but like there was this wave of people who kind of like have found themselves in like away from environments that, prevent them from doing that, like in big urban areas even. Like I certainly have friends who are in cities, who are in New York still, and it's a completely different
right.
experience, but I don't know, like some people kind of sense this, I think, weirdly enough, whether it was like years before or months before or even weeks before, and position themselves in places to really appreciate that, because
Yeah, that's true.
that's the
But
key thing. Yeah.
yeah, and it is a good point that my friends in New York are the least happy.
Yeah,
It's
well, of
not,
course.
I
Yeah.
think that it's like a very hard place to be right now.
It's the
Um,
epicenter, right? And it's been.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's impossible to not to feel the palpable quality of death and suffering,
Yeah.
and to not to feel stir crazy, kind of cooped up in the little box, and
Yeah, you
um,
were there not too long ago. One of the last
yeah,
times I was there like a week before it really got crazy. But yeah, you could feel definitely. It's a crazy place to be in a situation like this, not just for the density, just the energetics that are there, and yeah, to
yeah, for
maintain a
sure.
positive vibe there is definitely a skill.
Yeah, and I have a friend. I have friends who own a bar, Max Fish, and that we used to go there every night when I was younger,
Yeah,
and and they were like, there was 9/11, there was the blackout, all these things have happened in New York, but we've always been able to like get a drink
yeah,
together,
exactly.
and now suddenly we can't, and it's a totally different experience.
Yeah, yeah,
And so it's interesting because it is such a different lesson, right? It's like it's not about being together in the city and like kind of going through this together. It's like, well, you have to go and face yourself. It's like
yeah.
you can't drink and you have to be alone. Um,
Is this Venus retrograde stuff, the shadow work? Like where is this? Because this is, I think, one of the things that isolation, or let's even call it solitude, not even the negative
mhm,
context of being
mhm.
alone. This is one of the best opportunities to actually look in to your psyche and see what's working and what's not, and how situations have kind of, concretized around those beliefs. I mean, what astrologically is kind of pressing down on the shadow work, right now?
Yeah, well, a lot, first of all. But I can break it down. It's a
Yeah,
lot of
break
different
it
things at
down.
once. Okay, so one is, of course, the Saturn Pluto conjunction began this whole year
Oh
off.
yeah.
Saturn, karma, Lord of karma, compression, isolation, patriarchy, system structure, society, you know, no big deal. And the status quo, history, Pluto, death and rebirth, explosions, shadows, shadow work. So karmic explosions, the explosions of patriarchy, the explosions of the status quo, and everything we knew to be reality.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
That's why we called it the paradigm shift of 2020.
right.
And then Jupiter is now involved. And Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto have not conjoined in something like 6,500 years.
Wow.
And, in Capricorn. Did I say that? And
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
it's
it's Capricorn. It's been fucking, I know that the card in tarot associated with Capricorn is the devil, and fear is involved. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Capricorn's got good qualities
Oh, of
too.
course, of course. I
Yeah,
love it. I love
but
it. Devil's great, just to
Capricorn
be clear. Devil's
Capricorn
great.
is ruled by Saturn. So Capricorn
Mm,
is system, structure, society, government, heads of government, the status quo, history, the way things have been, on reality. So that's where all this work is happening. And Jupiter now is conjunct Pluto, Jupiter, the great expander, and our belief systems. So our beliefs are exploding. We're having karmic repercussions and explosions because of our weird dogmas and beliefs and cult thinking, um,
Yeah.
which we've all been susceptible, whether it's white supremacy or subscribing to the culture of materialism and capitalism. It's like we're all susceptible to it, and we've all
Totally.
fallen prey to it. Um, and of course, Trumpism.
Do you know I'm like weirdly like a Trump fan now in like a perverted way? We should talk about that.
God,
Oh
no,
yeah, go
please
my
no, please no,
I'm not
please.
voting for him. Don't worry about it. Don't worry
Uh,
about it. We definitely got to talk about that at some point.
oh God, Jade, can we
I
hang up now?
I know I watched a bunch of Fox News for a while. It
God.
has less to do with anything with policy and like casting a blind eye to the objective kind of ridiculousness, but he's such a good archetype of like waking people up, and it's not to justify or say we need this over and over again, but like I don't know, like sometimes he'll say something and like I was watching these press conferences and I'd see how something he said where he's just being an idiot. He's not trying to be nefarious, but it'll be latched onto like he's some evil person. I'm like, no, he's just a dingus. Like he doesn't, like he's really like not as seriously invested. And people are like, well, he's the leader of the world, he's the leader of the United States, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I get it. I totally get it. But any president, over the past really forever has a fair amount of blood on their hands in a lot of different ways. The one thing I admire, I don't know if that's the right word, that I think I've kind of not hated about him is he's consistently the way he is. He doesn't deviate from his persona. He really believes his viewpoint is correct. And as fucked up as it may be, I can work with that. Like I can actually understand how he operates as a person, and that kind of loosens the shackles of me being emotionally invested in a way. Also, just from like a practical standpoint, I do recognize that regardless of who's been president, and I know this isn't true for everyone, I don't want to make that false equivalency, but for me, my life is not incredibly affected by who's president. I get that I'm a straight white male and I have that privilege, but for the most part, I can't at that point, unless I'm going to get invested in changing the situation. I can't get freaked out about who's president and what they're saying because I just don't, you know what I mean? That's kind of how I've engaged with him. And since I've done that, he's kind of just funny. You know what I mean? Knowing that I can't
Mhm.
really do anything about it. And like I said, I'm not going to vote for him, but like, look at this Biden shit. This is really interesting too. This whole fucking,
Ugh,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like it's
No, I mean the one. I mean, I wouldn't take what you said and conclude that you're a fan of Trump. So I think that's a stretch. But and I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't use those words anymore. Uh, but in terms of Trump, it's true that he is in some ways just like an open book in terms of his corruption. He's
yeah.
just like very transparent about it, which
Yeah.
other presidents have not been.
Yeah.
You know, and Biden is problematic for sure. I'm praying that at least because of Bernie's success, he will steer left. We will see.
Yeah.
And I'm also praying that because we're meant to be entering matriarchy in the United States,
Yes.
astrologically is meant to be having its death and rebirth in 2022 to 2023.
Mhm.
And we're having a transit that indicates the death of a president in office.
Totally.
so
Totally. I was just
so
thinking of this.
I
Yeah.
think if Biden's president and his VP is someone like Elizabeth Warren, then suddenly we could have our first female president,
I think this sounds, what's really funny is I didn't know any about that astrologically, but I felt like whoever this next president was, and not just because we're getting old candidates, that they were going to die. You know what I mean? Like the next president. I don't know about Trump. This guy believes in his health so much. It's insane. But, you know what I mean? Like that does make sense. And I feel like it's about time. Yeah. The matriarchy is definitely happening again. There's a lot of Isis, Kali energy going on. I'm loving it
Oh, shit.
personally.
It's interesting because there have been so many articles about how the countries that are doing the best through this pandemic are the woman-led
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
And
New
it's we're
Zealand.
just
Yeah.
I got chills when I said that, but we're just feeling the power of female leadership, and I do feel it turning toward that direction. And as we experience this sort of dismantling of these unhealthy, unhelpful beliefs,
Mm.
which is Jupiter conjunct Pluto, and also the South Node's about to be moving through Sag, ruled by Jupiter. So we're
Yeah.
purifying the old karma of our weird, faulty belief systems, our unhealthful belief systems. Um, and we're, part of that is like undoing our internalized oppression. If we're like a woman or a person of color, or, gay or any marginalized group, we are undoing our internalized oppression so that we can more fully step into our power, into our leadership, by dismantling our, inherited fear and shame,
Yeah.
which is also Pluto and Saturn.
Yeah. No, I mean that's what happened to me last year is Jupiter moved through Sagittarius where all my well, not all, but a lot of my major planets were. And I was like, what the fuck? That's right about the time we met. I
Mm.
just had that right around that eclipse season. My birthday is July 20th, and holy, I never had anything like that happen in my life. Just how everything just started getting topsy turvy and like it just like it was insane, but it was like like that Jupiter influence. It's expansive, but it's graceful too if you allow it to be. It's one of the coolest.
Yeah, I mean, it can go too far
Oh,
too,
totally. Who are you telling?
it can go way too far.
Who are you telling?
I mean, we've had a lot of work done around Sag over the last several years. We had Saturn move through Sag, and that was like people started getting really dogmatic at that point, solid in their beliefs. And
Yeah.
Jupiter moved through Sag then last year, and it was like a lot of cult thinking kind of erupted.
Yes.
And now the South Node's coming in to clean up the
So
mess.
explain the South Node stuff to
Yeah.
me. I love this.
Yeah, so the lunar nodes are the north node and the south node of the moon. And they're basically points. And they're points on either side of the Earth where the lunar path and the solar path from the perspective of Earth, called the ecliptic, intersect. And when we have a new moon or a full moon at one of those points, that's when we have an eclipse.
Mm.
And so, what they indicate, the South Node is our past life karma, our early life karma, what we need to karmically resolve in order to move into our true life path,
Mm.
in order to move into our soul's greatest potential for evolution. And that's the North Node, our soul's greatest potential for evolution. And so if you look at your natal chart, I can tell you the whole story of your past lives looking at your natal chart based on the position of the South Node. I mean, then we look at what sign it's in, what house it's in, what planetary ruler of that sign, what that planetary ruler is doing, what angle. North Node. Oh, what's that
No,
noise?
we just broke up for a second. Just repeat the last 10 seconds of what you were saying. It came back.
Okay, what was the last thing you remembered?
South Node and North Node past lives. You were just going into that.
Okay, so the South Node, if you look at the natal, oh wait, so you didn't hear any of it?
I heard like the natal chart, you can tell the whole story of like past lives based on, and then,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, you can tell the whole story of your past life through the South Node, through what sign it's in, what house it's in,
perfect.
what the planetary ruler of the sign is in, what angles are being formed to the South Node and to the planetary ruler of the South Node. It's like you can get very detailed and deep into the past life story,
Uh,
which is fascinating, and that's usually when clients cry because there's like some kind of moon memory or some kind of, you know, deep emotional memory of that
right.
pain and trauma. And the North Node is our evolutionary potential, what we are meant to orient our lives toward in order to feel like, yes, I'm on my true life path.
Mm,
Yes, this is what I'm meant to be doing, even though it's uncomfortable and it's where I'm underdeveloped. When I orient toward this, it's like, whoa, my life is flowing.
right.
Yeah. And so when we look at it collectively, the South Node is where we are cleaning up our collective karma. And the North Node is where we are developing ourselves and orienting more toward it in order to grow as a
Got
collective
it.
in terms of our evolution. So for the past year and a half, the South Node's been in Capricorn.
Of course it has.
Patriarchy, materialism, empty achievement.
Clean it up.
Um, being a wage slave, work, work, work,
Right.
like prove yourself to daddy to get your love.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and the North Node's been in Cancer, the great mother, the matriarch, right? And so right now, this month, we are wrapping, in 2 days, we are
Wow.
wrapping up this this journey of the North Node in Cancer and the South Node in Capricorn. The nodes move in backwards, basically, like Merlin,
Wow.
backwards through time. And the North Node is now at 0 Cancer. So we are at the zenith of the sign, and we are learning that absolute powerful lesson of Cancer, which is all about being at home, staying safe, calling your mother,
Right.
cooking, taking care of yourself, orienting more toward human connection and seeing that as richness versus empty achievement at
So
the
it
expense of others and the earth.
so the North Node moves back into Gemini?
Now it's moving into Gemini.
Wow, I see. Oh, I
Yeah.
never understood the nodes until now. You're the best.
Yes.
Holy shit.
So yeah,
Wow.
May 5th, the North Node moves into Gemini and the South Node moves into Sagittarius. So now the big collective karmic work is going to
Mm,
be around faulty belief systems, and where have we been too rigid and dogmatic, spouting our points of view at one another instead of listening and dialoguing?
all right.
Where have we believed distortions of truth and lies instead of looking at objective reality to
Right.
help us find our gauge? And the North Node in Gemini, it's like we're moving toward Enlightened Gemini, which, of course, there's neurotic Gemini, which everyone always talks about, but there's also Enlightened Gemini.
Hmm.
So Enlightened Gemini is openness, curiosity, dialoguing. It's objective truth scientists, healthcare workers, um, thinkers,
Right.
intellects, like let's break this down logically, let's have an open exchange.
What
So
what rules Gemini? Mercury?
Mercury,
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? Of course.
yeah. Gemini's the twins, right? So the twins are always in dialogue. And it also represents paradox. So it's like, well, both things are true.
Yeah.
It's like heart and mind, spirit and science.
Yeah.
And so, how can we create dialogues with the scientists and the spiritualists? How can we create dialogues with two sides of the coin that are open and constructive instead of rigid and dogmatic? And it gets nowhere. Like if you're a liberal and you yell your beliefs at a
Totally.
Trump supporter, that gets us nowhere, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so I think,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it's asking questions. That's the last thing I'll say. I've been thinking about this, and I got really obsessed with cults at one point, one recent point. So I watched like a million documentaries about
Yeah,
cults,
they're
and
fascinating.
fascinating. And what I learned is that it's next to impossible to sort of get somebody out of cult. But the people who've had the best luck asked the right questions of the cult members.
Right.
So instead of saying, you're an idiot, what are you fucking doing?
Right. Right.
They asked them questions that made them think, that started to dismantle their rigidity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what Gemini, Enlightened Gemini, is all about, asking questions.
It's like Socratic. It's like
Yes.
being gentle and Socratic is very important. And also, there's an element of space there, which I think is also reflected in Gemini too, because you need sometimes, if you're really talking about dogmatic or cult like thinking, there may be a key that you can ask with a question that unlocks the door, but you have to give sometimes people the time and space to process that on their own, so they're not feeling like they're being pushed through a door they don't want to go through, which is what this can feel like breaking out of a cult or cult like logic or thinking, regardless of whether it's a political cult or religious or just health or whatever. It is something an individual has to feel like they do, because if not, it can really just upset their entire psyche to a way that, you know, is
Mm-hmm.
troublesome for people to
Mm-hmm.
go through, and maybe they don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can even be dangerous, if your whole ideological framework, which keeps you sane, is suddenly exploded.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can start to lose your mind or feel nihilistic or even suicidal. So it's like, somehow we through Gemini curiosity and openness and questioning, it's like it just feels like a gentler way of dismantling some of this tough stuff.
It's cool. I never realized they went backwards, the nodes. The
Mm-hmm.
planets, like, as like, I get the archetypal aspects and like the movements of the zodiac and transits I can grasp. But then when I actually start to think about how this all this stuff is like in the sky and like the patterns they've make, like I'm sure you've seen the thing like the fractal, it makes like the flower of life, the transits of like Venus and the moon or something. It's some like amazing pattern. Like it just blows my mind that this is actually how stuff works. It's like, and that people were able to ascertain that this was going on and then also ascribe qualities to it. It always feels so like divinely inspired to me, like any way you slice it. It's
Mm-hmm.
astounding. It's
Yeah,
astounding.
I know. I love it.
It's super cool. So what other themes for the what do you okay, let's ask this since we're in it.
Hmm.
Timing astrologically, what are you looking at related to pandemic,
Hmm.
quarantine? I mean, also I'll just throw this out there. I personally feel like as the weather gets nicer and nicer in the northern hemisphere, it's going to be harder and harder regardless of data or
Hmm.
statistics to keep people inside. So like what are you looking at to be like what's going on? Not when this is going to end per se, but like when are we going to see shifts in terms of behavior collectively?
Yeah, so I there is a retraction happening right now. It was like clockwork when Pluto stationed retrograde.
Yeah.
It was about a week ago. There was a retraction of like the wave, the death wave,
Yeah, yeah.
Pluto's death. And it started to get more under control in the world. Um, and Pluto, even though it's not in under control, it's like starting to get more under control.
Yeah.
And Pluto will go direct in October. So I see another death wave coming
Right.
then in the fall. And then Saturn and Jupiter conjoin in Aquarius in December, right after the elections.
Mm,
And Mars stations direct a week after the elections, which could be an eruption of violence. We'll see.
mm,
And in December, Aquarius is the new age. We're moving into this Aquarian age. It's the future. It's egalitarianism. It's the pinnacle of human potential. It's enlightened society.
right.
And so we might start to feel this glimmer of like, okay, we're getting ready to build the next phase.
Right.
You know, I do believe that Trump will lose.
Mm.
I Uranus is opposite the sun on election day. It's supposed to be a change. Um, and so we'll see what that all means. But I'm reluctant to make predictions, but I just did it. Oops. So I've meant to keep that to myself. So, so I think December we're going to start to sort of feel like, okay, time to build the next phase, and then February is when I see us kind of beginning to really liberate from the
Mm.
pandemic, which seems early actually, but according to like scientific
Yeah, they're saying
predictions.
like 2 years, 2022, but yeah,
Yeah, and it could be. I mean, some version of like freedom could arise, in February, for some of us or something like that. But then 2022 to 2023 is the death and rebirth of the United States. So it actually would line up if like
wow.
2022 were the year. It's like, okay, now we're rebirthing the new paradigm. But I do see us beginning to kind of conceive the future in a very concerted way.
Yeah,
December and February. And of course, that's up to each of us. Like, this could be a
of
time
course.
where we're like, okay, I can't live this way anymore. So I'm going to create a farm commune, or I can't live this way anymore. So I'm going to invent my own career that matches these times in a way that's more, supportive of others and supportive of myself and my livelihood. We're going to begin reinventing ourselves and our lives. We don't have to wait for any freaking government.
Well, that's the whole point, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that is the.
right. I mean, we if we do that, that's actually how change happens. I mean, I also heard an interesting take from my friend Jessa Reed where she was saying, I keep saying this because it really struck me that our desire to kind of reflect codependency out in relationships or just the world. Like, I need this to feel better. I need the government to provide a framework for me to thrive. Not that it shouldn't be a helper, but ultimately that type of thinking does lead to a surveillance state. It's like you need protection from outside of you. So let's just make sure everything, single thing is taken care of, which is ultimately very unsatisfying. So if we really want to see the changes that I think a lot of us feel, right? We're talking about kind of this like Shambhala, like enlightened society, like you do that
Mm-hmm.
first. You do that first. You stabilize your own consciousness first. You stabilize your own life, your own social life, your relationships, your relationship to yourself. Do the things that you want to do. You'll start feeling like you're supposed to be in the place you're supposed to be. And
Mm-hmm.
that radically changes your local environment, your regional environment. And to me, that's what it feels like is inevitably taking place, which is probably some of the reason that I can, you know, subscribe to being entertained by Trump rather than seeing him as
You're
some
not
like
a fan of Trump.
malevolent. I mean, I'm toning it down for the podcast, but you should see me watch these things. Like, it is entertaining at the very
Right. No, I
least.
get
Yeah.
it. He's clearly an entertainer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's interesting because we're moving out of a 2000 plus year Piscean age into the Aquarian age.
Yeah.
And the Piscean age has been all about having a guru, waiting for a
Yes.
savior.
Yes.
It started with the birth of Christ, and so it was like, we've talked about this before, but like waiting for the savior in all regards,
Yeah.
even politically, like save us, save us, save us.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here at home waiting for a savior. And the Aquarian age is not that at all. The
Yeah.
Aquarian age is individual liberation. It's making sure all beings are equally respected,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, and it's making sure, there can still be like this person's richer than this person, but there's more equity, there's
Yes.
more, every being has their basic needs met, and we make sure of that.
Yes.
And we we stop waiting for the freaking savior,
This is it.
and we connect directly to the divine and into our own inspiration and our own inventiveness. That's Aquarius too, being the inventor of our own
Yes.
lives, being the inventor of our own happiness, being the inventor of our own relationships and how they function, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of this. It's like, in a way, we like being isolated, Saturn in Aquarius, we're having to become more self-reliant,
Yes.
we're having to form our direct connections to the divine. By necessity, it's like choiceless, and what's fascinating to me is through this whole Christian age, there was, of course, the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
And I always talk about this, and sorry if anyone's listening to me talk about this for the first time, but it's so important to me. But when the Spanish Inquisition happened, there was this whole shaming of the feminine that
Yeah.
happened, of killing of the witches, killing of the pagans, shaming of sex, shaming of anything that gave us direct connection to the freaking divine.
Right. Right.
It's like, no, to connect to the divine, you have to go through us, the steep patriarchal hierarchy.
Yes. Yes.
And now it's like, I mean, the young kids do not believe that.
No. No.
That's not a thing that they subscribe to. And what's fascinating to me is that the Gen Zers are the Pluto and Sag generation. They are here to explode our weird religions and beliefs.
I
You know?
I can only tell you as a new fan of TikTok, which is just like I love TikTok so much, which is a lot of Zoomers, they're on a different wavelength. They're just completely on a different wavelength, and what they're doing is they're free and they don't give a shit whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, whether it's religion, whether it's philosophy. Like they're untethered from these social constructs that seem to have not, I don't want to even say limited, but have influenced how a lot of previous generations have come. And it's fucking amazing. And it's hilarious. And there's like this qualitative vibe about it that I'm just like kind of familiarizing myself with, but it's everything you just mentioned. It's like it's an
Mhm.
upheaval, an individual, it's individually accessing the divine without being egoic or individualistic about it. It's like
Yeah.
recognizing the connection, but recognizing that everyone has it rather than one, which also is a really effective preventative kind of prophylactic from cult like logic, right? I mean, that that ability to externalize divine in someone else or something else, that opens the door for a lot of nefarious shit, intentionally or otherwise. So yeah, I mean, this is the age we're moving through. I'm pretty optimistic in the middle of a
Yeah,
pandemic.
I mean, I am too, and I love that, everyone 29 and under is like a democratic socialist,
Yeah.
and they're all egalitarians, and they're
Yeah.
all like incredibly aware of issues of race and gender, and
Yeah.
um, they're all poets and activists, and like I honestly, I really resonate with the younger
It's pretty
generation.
cool.
Except the only thing I don't resonate with is like all the weird plastic surgery and like lip fillers and
This
stuff.
is a thing I noticed because some of my friends like hang out with like a lot of like 24 and younger people and both genders. I didn't realize this whole like this body thing was like a real thing for the younger generation. Like I think it's an identity thing as much as anything else because they feel like such like
Well,
yeah,
Instagram and TikTok are life, right?
yeah,
So if you look good, I mean, it's just nuts. It's just nuts to me. Everyone has freaking lip fillers now, and they're getting crazy plastic surgery like it's no big deal.
yeah,
And I'm like, what if the beauty standards change like next year and you like
yeah.
reconstructed your face to look like this? Like, are you going to be bummed?
Well, you just do it
Um,
again. You know, you look like a cat next
Once you
year.
make your nose smaller, you can't make it bigger again.
You just add some extra plaster on. We're good to
Oh
go.
my God, it's terrifying. Okay, that's the one thing that makes me feel old is like I don't get all the plastic surgery stuff.
Hey, it's a thing, you know. What it's our destiny as people to be overtaken by the imaginations of the younger people. So there's always going to be some aspect of it where like I don't get it. I don't
Yeah,
fucking
but
get
I,
it.
I am hoping that with Venus retrograding that we start to rethink some of that stuff. Like we
Yeah,
start to rethink beauty and how we relate to beauty,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
What is beautiful and is it superficial? Because Venus and Gemini can be kind of superficial, but when it's retrograding, we're rethinking that superficiality, you
yeah.
know?
And I think everyone should have the ability to look how they want. You obviously you probably know my stance on this is you should just imagine the feeling of how you would feel if you looked exactly how you wanted to look. You don't have to go and do all this extra additive stuff. Or if that's really what you want to do and it feels right, go for it. No value judgment there, but definitely be mindful of subscribing to someone else's way of what you should be doing. And that's just again like the physical stuff is just a reflection of the energetic stuff, right? Trying to conform
Yeah.
yourself to someone else's standards is always going to be an ultimately unsatisfying game, like for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm a Virgo, so I'm naturally judgmental and also also natural. Like I'm into natural stuff. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think imperfections are beautiful. Like that's what makes someone beautiful to me. When I see a guy or a woman who looks perfect, I'm like not attracted at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
When I see someone who's like there's something weird about them or there's something off about their beauty or
Yeah.
their face or their features, I'm like that's like compelling to me.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a shame, and frankly, bad taste.
You look too good. That's in poor taste. How dare you?
I know. It's like the looking perfect is tasteless.
That's hilarious. Um, what we should do these more regularly. I think it's just good to, if you're up for it, just to check in every once in a while and get the updates. What other major themes did I miss anything? I mean, I know there's endless stuff, but like, what else would you want to share with people listening about what's going on astrologically or what we can
Oh,
expect?
one thing I think is a hot topic is that when as Venus stations retrograde, she's conjunct the goddess asteroid Vesta,
Mm.
and Vesta is sacred sexuality.
Ooh, I just pulled
Uh,
that oracle card last night.
no
Yeah,
way.
and the Threads of Fate for real.
So I think too, it's so interesting to me because I don't often follow popular culture, but I happen to watch Love is Blind, which aired right before the pandemic, which was this like crazy reality TV show that went totally nuts, like viral across the
Yeah.
world. And it was about these people who met without knowing what the other looked like,
Mm.
and they fell in love and got engaged without ever knowing what the other one looks like. And two
Wow.
of those couples are still married,
Wow.
years later. And that it's interesting that happened right before the pandemic, because that's such a theme now. It's like you can't just swipe and go have sex, and
No.
it's not all based on physicality anymore. You have to actually get to know someone,
Yeah.
hopefully. And not a good time to be promiscuous, but
Not the best. Not the best.
so I really think that I'm hoping that with Venus and Mars retrograding, and with Venus retrograding conjunct Vesta, that we're going to start to recalibrate our attitudes and relationships to sexuality, where it's like
Yeah.
sex isn't actually more satisfying if you're with someone who's got like lip fillers and fake tits and perfect waistline or whatever.
Nothing to do with that. No.
Yeah, I mean, there's what we call fifth house sex, which is you're cute, let's fuck, I'm performing for you.
Yeah.
But really deep, healing, liberating sex is eighth house sex,
Mm.
which has to do with I'm standing naked and before you exactly as I am, and vice versa. And we're not fearing rejection from the other. We are surrendering and opening to this moment with one another, to one another,
Yeah.
and this
That'd be
place.
Scorpio sex. Yeah.
Scorpio sex, yeah. So, and fifth house sex is Leo sex.
Mm.
So Scorpio sex. So it's in its highest potential. Scorpio sex is deep love and trust, and looking each other in the eyes and forming that connection from a deeper place of being seen and seeing the other.
Mm.
So that's much different from you're cute, you're cute. What did you eat for lunch in third grade? Hot, hot, hot. Magic, magic, magic.
Right.
I'm performing now. Very different experience. And that is sacred sex. I mean, sex is the highest potential for humans on this earth. That energy, it's like the most healing energy on earth,
Where
you know?
this is what my whole last episode was just about. It was
Oh, damn.
literally about this and how yeah, and it's just a primal drive too. It's divine and primal. It's perfect. It's a really good modality to really and like such a feminine, you know, it's there's a lot of good stuff with the sacred
Yeah,
sexuality for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. There's so much to say, but yeah, it's like also orienting to the feminine desire rather than the
Yeah.
masculine desire, and
Yeah.
that's also Venus retrograde. That's like, what does our inner feminine desire, which I think I mentioned, and it's like, well, for our inner feminine, sex actually begins the moment we wake up. How do we make the bed together? How did
Yeah.
you speak to me? How do we make the eggs, with one
Yeah.
another? Like that kind of thing actually goes into the act of lovemaking. And the other thing is the female really wants to see and be seen. Like that is the deep inner feminine desire. Like, look me in the eyes, you
Right.
know?
Wow.
So I like to think about the like, what would it be like if my inner feminine domed somebody?
Yeah.
And it'd be like, look me in the eyes,
I have
and
I have my Black Moon Lilith right on my IC, so I know
uh,
I have familiarity with the divine feminine rage. I'm in touch with that at the deepest parts of my psyche. It does come out, so I get it.
yeah, I have Lilith conjunct Uranus in Scorpio on my IC.
Holy
Okay.
shit!
Don't be
Wow.
fooled by my Virgo rising.
Wow. Holy shit. Wow. 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 Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that I actually understand this stuff now too. It's like a whole other language in which you can interface with people. It's the best. All right. Well, I'm gonna end with 3 questions that I asked. I don't know if we asked them last time, and then
Me
one
too.
open-ended one. We'll just see what they happen to be again. And yeah, let's definitely do this. Like whenever they're listen, if we're all cooped up and you have the time, I'm
Every
sure.
time.
Yeah,
Do
it's
it.
super
Anytime
fun.
you want.
What's your favorite color?
Or like indigo, blue, or
Mm,
but like blue, like that kind of Japanese indigo
I love
color.
it. What's your favorite number?
11 probably. That's my math. That's my life path number.
Oh, nice, nice. I'm a 3. What is your favorite animal?
Lottie. I said the same thing
Yes,
last
well, of course. I mean, you got to be consistent
my
with a
dog.
dog like that. Yeah, I mean, come on, obviously.
And
Uh,
she's not a dog, so I can't say
yeah,
dog.
I know, right? You can't. You just have to say it's a creature, Lottie. I
Yeah.
totally get it. I totally get it. I've
Some
met. We've met.
hybrid of a bat and a dragon, a baby dragon, and
It's
a
so true.
monkey and a Chewbacca.
It's so true. It's so true. And last question, what's a practical tip that you could share with people listening that's helped you in your life?
Feel your feelings.
You know we're on the same page with that one. You know
Yeah,
that.
just sit up. If you're feeling afflicted emotions, just sit up straight and totally upright and relaxed and allow yourself to feel what you feel without spinning stories around it, and find it in your body. Find where you're holding the tension, relax it and liberate it just by feeling it, you know?
I love it. And I just signed up for your Patreon, so I know that's a
I
thing.
thank you.
What where else can people connect with you and tune into what you're doing? I know your website, Ethereal Culture, but what else? Where do we go? And there'll
Yeah,
be links.
etherealculture.com. I post about the new moon, the full moon, and the astrology of the month every month. And my Instagram is also Ethereal Culture. I wrote a book called The Stars Within You, A Modern Guide to Astrology. It's available pretty much everywhere, and it's in a bunch of languages now, and there's an audiobook too. Um, I think Spanish, Portuguese, Norwegian, and Dutch.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And yeah, it's cool. And then Patreon, I post videos regularly and astrologer conversations with fellow astrologers about the astrology of the week. I do it almost every week. And that's patreon.com/astrologer, which is easy enough.
Wow. That's
I know.
cool. How
I
did
was
you
an early.
That's amazing.
I know, I know. I have this tech friend in San Francisco, and he tipped me off to Patreon
Wow.
in the early days, and I was able to get Astrologer.
Oh, well, that's easy. That's easy for me to remember and link to.
Yeah,
Uh,
patreon.com/astrologer.
Amazing. Juliana, thank you for doing this. Let's do this again soon.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to that episode. Go check out Juliana on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/astrologer, because that's fucking easy. And check her out, Ethereal Culture. Her monthly horoscopes are some of my favorite things I look forward to, so go check those out. You can connect with this show on syncpodcast.com. There's a mailing list. There's Instagram for me, Twitter for me. I'm all over the place. I'm a normal person like you. I have social media. I do stuff. I post things. Patreon is the best place to go for deep dives. If you're listening at this point, I recommend doing that. It's a lot of stuff like this, but I'm more engaging with the people who sign up there. We do live things. It's fun. It's hangout time. So that's what's going on. I think that's it. Until next week. I will see you next week. That doesn't make sense. What the fuck was I just about to say? I don't know. Smoke weed every day. Happy imagining. Bye-bye.